And here's the coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Jon Cooper, with a giant whale behind him. Where are you exactly?
Well, I'm in a place called Anna Maria Island, which is about an hour from Tampa Bay. We spent a little time here. I have ever since we've been down here. Actually, Todd Lewicki, while he was with the organization, he turned me on to this place back in 2014, and we basically never left. So it's been a great place to be, during this tough time. So actually, as you can see, it's a small place. So I got our little whale, but it was, as you can see, we've been late to take down the Happy Easter signs.
Hey, that's
so
okay. We need happiness wherever we can get it. A belated Happy Easter to you as well. How do you deal with the situation where you have to prepare for a playoffs that may never happen?
In all seriousness, it's been difficult because there's so many unknowns to what is going forward. So we can sit here and work with, as you said, we don't know what is ahead of us. I think there's been some promising news of late, what's come out here, at least, in the United States, and listening to President Trump and all through the world. But everybody, there's a lot of people still pumping the brakes, saying there's a long way to go. But our job as professionals is to make sure we're ready and we're prepared. And to be honest, it's kind of been the fun part about what's gone on here of late is actually getting on these Zoom chats and being able to go with the staff and go through scenarios. So for instance, we've talked, well, what if we come back in small groups? Okay, how are we going to handle that? Who's going to handle these situations? And we've kind of programmed ourselves and planned, okay, if that's a scenario. If we come back as a full group, okay, how are we going to do that? If we are allowed to, if a training camp really is going to be, say, for instance, 3 or 4 weeks, well, it's a different mentality coming to this training camp as opposed to a regular season training camp because players haven't skated. For instance, I talked to Anthony Cirelli. He says this is the longest time he's gone without skating in his entire life. So you have to account for that. And then you got to fast forward, and down the line after you get to all those steps is potentially the Toronto Maple Leafs. So if everything was trending in the direction it was, and there are a playoffs, it looks like the Leafs are going to be the team. So now we got to start preparing for them, as well as Florida, Carolina, Columbus, all those other teams that were in the mix. So it's given us a lot of things to do, but this is the time. There's no excuse not to be prepared.
Your last game before the break, I think, was a 2-1 loss to Toronto. Tell me about how you thought about your team, and have you actually been doing that, game planning for the Leafs?
We have, and the one thing we had a benefit of is we played the Leafs twice recently before the break, so we got a little bit of a look at them. But they're probably scouting us, sitting here saying, well, there was no Hedman and no Stamkos, and we're looking at them saying, well, there's no Riley and no Muzzin, and so you don't have your full teams. But my assumption would be if we do get to continue to play, all the teams will be healthy, and so playing field will be leveled a little bit. But we've played the Leafs a lot over the years. It's a fun team to play, and one thing I do know is if we are fortunate enough to match up against each other, it'll be a fun one to watch because it will have no shortage of star power in that one.
I just realized I have Saving Private Ryan on in the background. I don't know if you can hear the gun battles. Very unprofessional not to turn that off before I started with you at this point in time. You said you talked to Cirelli. Do you talk to each player and try to say, okay, this is what you were doing well, this is what I need you to work on if we do come back? Does it get that detailed?
No, not for me. It's more about what are they doing with their time, how they're looking after themselves. The one thing is the commonality of every phone call is, do you have any information? And it's like, I don't, sorry. And it's like, do you have any information about what's going on with the PA? No, I don't. And that's probably the frustrating part. But the guys are, you do find out what video games guys like. So Cirelli's caught between the Call of Duty and Fortnite. So depending which friend group he's going to play with. But it's
yeah, I'm guessing he doesn't ask for your advice on that.
No, that was where I pulled my 9-year-old in for that one. We have a pretty good group, and I understand that we're in Tampa and the weather's nice and everything here, but pretty much our whole team has stayed. Even our European guys, they all stayed. So we looked at that as a really good sign with our group of wanting to stick together and be close. And I understand that there's, not in the foreseeable future, nothing's changing, but it's nice to know that the guys are they're working together. I try and talk to a couple players a day to see how they're doing. But as this has gone on, we all kind of know where we're at. But the big thing is to make sure the guys still understand that there is a season to be played and to treat this time, get their bodies right, and mentally prepare in case we come back.
Every team that plays in whatever playoff format we have will be crushed if the season is canceled. But I thought, particularly you guys, because of what happened last year and what I would assume would be really desperation to atone for that. Is that fair?
The story's written that way. There's no question. The thing for me, it's not so much, yes, the way the season ended last year, there's no question. But it was what we did throughout this year that I think is getting lost in where we are, because if I remember, like 30 games in, we were something like 17-13 and not an ideal spot. I think we were 6th in our division, and we were really working on the mental aspect of our games, and we know we had the talent, but it was putting ourselves. Stop chasing last year, turning the page on that and focusing on why did last year happen. First of all, we won 62 games. So there was something going right for us for a long part of the year. And then why did it come to a crashing halt? And part of it was we played a really formidable opponent in Columbus, and good for them. But we knew we had more in us, but why? And so we tried to look into ourselves and just tweak some things that needed probably changing in our mental approach to the game. And it took us a little bit of time, but when it did click, great things were happening. We won, I think, 10 in a row at one point, and then we started another streak and won 11 in a row. And I liked a lot of the things that was happening mentally with our team, and it was starting to translate into wins and losses. And that's the toughest part. Is because
I think that's kind of what I meant by the question. Not necessarily just last year, but the fact that it looked like you were a different team and it looked like you were poised to do something differently, and that must make it doubly as crushing that it may not happen.
It may not, and the thing is that doesn't guarantee we're gonna win in the playoffs anyway. I did like our group, and I loved our group and our chances, but as you've seen, like, who could have predicted? Everybody, we're kind of the gold star in what happened last year, but remember, all 4 first seeds lost in the first round, all the 4 number 1 seeds. So you just got to get to the tournament at the end, and we were there. And it's not just us. Like, you look at Boston's having a fabulous year. Washington was doing really well. Philadelphia was on a run like we haven't seen in a while, and so there was a group of teams that were really making a push. And hopefully we get to see how this plays out.
Are you okay with some of these things that are being tossed around, the best of 5s, if they have to do that, playing in front of empty arenas, which seems like a likelihood this summer if that's to happen? What would that be like?
Yeah, I think that the one thing about, we are in the entertainment business, and playing in front of fans, it is there's a difference. Even when you go to NHL buildings that don't have too many fans, you can tell there's a major difference in the game. And that's rare, but it's the guys love to play in front of fans, and I think that'll be a really difficult hurdle to get over, to play in front of empty buildings, to actually hear the banging and snot flying around in the corner when guys are hitting each other, which you normally wouldn't be able to hear. But
coaches cursing, every single word you say will be picked up.
Exactly. The trash, there won't be need for mics on the bench anymore. But so I think that'll be very, very difficult. I think the other thing is and I think once we've had a training camp, we'll probably have got over this hurdle. But I always sit there and say, well, are guys going to come by the bench and high five each other once they score? Or is everybody just going to go right to center ice?
Center like beer league?
Yeah. But in all seriousness, it'll be different without fans. I've heard talked about having neutral site games. It's weird to think it's so quick, the environment we are in already in just a month and a half, to think we're talking about this. But I do think sports is therapeutic, and in times like this, you don't realize how much you miss it. And I think if cricket is not an extremely popular sport in North America. It's hugely popular in other continents. But if you put on a cricket match right now, I think a lot of people would turn into it. And to have sports and teams and cities be able to gravitate and to cheer for something and something that gives them pride, I think TV ratings will never be higher. And so, hopefully that'll make up for no fans in the seats.
You mentioned therapeutic. How's Stammer's therapy? If we started skating again today, is he good to go?
Ironically, we had a call with our whole staff, our medical staff, our GM, and everybody today or yesterday, and we talked about that. And if everything started up, which let's just say, well, it's not going to start up today, but if everything started up in May, we'd have a full roster. So that was pretty exciting to hear.
Just quickly on yourself, you went through that run where you won everything. St. Louis Bandits in the NAHL, moved to Green Bay and win in the United States Hockey League, go to Norfolk and win, get to the Stanley Cup final in your second full year as a head coach, I believe, in Tampa. When all that happened in a string of 6-7 years, I mean, did you ever go, okay, this winning thing's easy. It's going to happen all the time?
Yeah, you don't really think of it that way until it stops. And the NHL is such a tough league to win, and I've been pretty blessed to have the players and the staff and the management group, the ownership group that we've had, and we've stuck together as a core. And I think that's been a big part of why we've had some longevity. The playoff
longest
run,
serving coach in the NHL right now. Is that weird?
That is extremely weird. I think I think it was weird for you to say it.
Well, I had to look it up again just to double check before.
But it's the playoffs. There's nothing like it, and you do get spoiled. Our first year we got swept in the first round. The second year, all of a sudden, we're in the Stanley Cup final, and we actually had a 2-1 series lead against Chicago. But I remember a couple things from that is when Scotty Bowman, who I'd never met before, stopped me after the handshake line as I was walking off the ice, and I was like, holy cow, this is Scotty Bowman. And he said, Coach, I just want to tell you, magnificent team. You've done an unbelievable job with this group, and you will be back. There's no question in my mind. I want you to take solace in the fact that I went to the Stanley Cup 3 years in a row and got swept every time when I first got into the league, and you will be back. And I thought it was kind of one of the coolest things that ever happened to me, and gave me a perspective coming in. But now every time I see Scotty, I ask him, well, when is that going to happen again? It's not coming as fast as we would have liked. I mean, we had a couple Game 7 losses in conference finals. It was crushing, but it just goes to show the talent, the parity, the coaches in this league. It's tough, and you just got to keep knocking on the door to making the playoffs, and hopefully one day you can just kick it in.
Well, maybe it'll be this summer under strange circumstances, but it'll still be hockey if they get to play, and I'm sure it would still mean just as much. I thank you so much for taking the few minutes out. I hope to see you behind a bench in some capacity sometime this summer.
I appreciate it, and everybody stay safe out there. And before we know it, this game we'll be back to normal as life as we know it. It'll be even better than ever.
Before we go, we should plug your book that's coming out this fall. Oh no, wait, it's my book. You're just in it.
That's true. I'm pretty sure I was your first phone call.
Jon Cooper, thanks a lot and best of luck.
See you guys.